Heartbreaking request, when a little girl had one day to change a billionaire's life. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The world felt heavier. I stood frozen in the bustling city, the noise swirling around me, a symphony of chaos. And within it, I saw her. A tiny girl, no more than 7, standing alone on the sidewalk. Her little hand trembled, clutching a worn-out teddy bear, its eye missing. She was a whisper in the storm, fragile yet fierce. The sunlight caught in her messy brown hair, casting a halo that made her seem almost ethereal. I could feel my heart racing. Why was she alone? Where were her parents? The air swallowed my questions. With every step closer, I noticed her eyes. Huge and shiny, brimming with unshed tears, they held a story that my soul could feel aching to tell. I knelt beside her, my heart pounding. "Are you lost, sweetie?" I whispered, but she only shook her head. Instead, she looked up at me, the weight of something monumental in her small silence. Then came the words that would change everything. "I have one day to help him," she said, and the tremor in her voice made my stomach drop. Who was she trying to help? Her tiny voice cracked just enough to let the weight of her mission spill out. "He's a billionaire. They say he's heartless. But I know he's not." I shuddered, the world rushing back in waves of noise and urgency. A billionaire? Heartless? My mind raced. I glanced around, people buzzing by, each wrapped up in their own lives, their own battles. But here was this girl, determined and fragile, ready to fight for someone she didn't even know. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Why would you want to help him?" Tears glistened on her cheeks. "Because everyone deserves one last chance." But as she spoke, her little hands trembled, and my heart ached at the thought of the pain she carried. Who had hurt her? Why did she choose this stranger to save? The street felt alive, almost hostile. The clock ticked louder, echoing the urgency that wrapped around us like a chain. She had one day. One day to change this man's life. I had so many questions, but the way she looked at me like a savior, a faith holder, made my stomach churn with unease. Around us, a haze set, a moment of breath held in the universe. Could this innocent girl unlock the heart of someone so far removed from her world? Just then, the distant honk of a taxi pulled my focus. "Will you help me?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm brewing in her eyes. I felt a lump in my throat. How could I say no? A decision crystallized in that moment, filled with uncertainty and adrenaline. But what lay ahead? I didn't have the answers, only an intense urge to protect her and unravel this puzzle. "Okay, let's go," I said, and as we stepped into the fray, a spark of something deeper ignited between us. The world faded away, except for the heart that remained heavy in my chest, the feeling that lives were entangled in their quest. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The city loomed around us as we found ourselves in a daze of movement. The little girl, clutching her tattered teddy bear closer, looked up with an intensity that was both startling and grounding. She had taken hold of my heart, pulling me deeper into her mission, and now we were united in a strange adventure governed by hope. "Where do we start?" I asked, scanning the street. My mind rushed with possibilities, yet a gnawing doubt lingered in the corner. What if we couldn't reach him in time? What if she was just a child lost in dreams? "First, we need to get to his building," she replied, resolute. "I saw him leave yesterday, maybe he'll be there again." The name floated in the ether of my memory, Maxwell Kingsley. The billionaire whose empire was built on steel and solitude, sculpted with a stern disposition and guarded heart. You really think hell listened to us? I probed, but she merely shrugged, her small shoulders carrying the weight of everything that was beyond her years. As the sun began to dip behind the skyscrapers, casting long shadows on the pavement, we navigated our way through the thrumming city, each step fueling a deeper well of uncertainty. What if he doesn't want to change? I murmured, caught between fear and admiration for her tenacity. Then we have to show him why he should. The girl's voice chimed with innocent wisdom, as if she held the answers to questions I hadn't even thought to ask. We arrived at the sleek glass building that towered over us. It glinted in the fading light, a monument to ambition that felt almost suffocating. My hands fidgeted nervously at my sides, and I glanced down at her. She looked so small against the grandiose structure, filled with hope that reeked of naivete. Can you give me a moment? I nudged her gently, needing to gather my thoughts. As she stepped aside, her attention caught by a mural of blooming flowers on the wall, I felt a swell of protectiveness. Behind that bravado was a child still vulnerable and innocent, and I didn't want the world to break her spirit. But what could I offer her? I was just a bystander in her earnest quest to wreck of what was supposed to be a predictable adult life now derailed by a little girl's dream. How do we enter? What do we say? My voice grew smaller as questions piled higher. When I turned back towards her, I saw a shimmer of understanding bloom in her eyes. Sometimes, people just need to be reminded they're not alone. The sincerity in her words struck deep, echoing across the chasm of time and pain in my own life. As the shadow of the building loomed overhead, suddenly, the doors of the grand entrance swung open. A crowd of suited individuals poured out, chatting animatedly, laughter mingling with the sounds of the city. My heart raced as I spotted a familiar face. It was Maxwell Kingsley himself, his signature dark hair tousled by the wind. The girl stood frozen beside me, eyes wide as she regarded the man who had become a specter in her journey. I could feel her grip on the teddy bear tighten as she stepped closer to me. This is it, she breathed, the intensity of her focus narrowing her world to just him, the man who seemed so distant from her innocence. Wait. We can't just, I started to say, but before I could finish, she tugged at my arm with unexpected strength. We have to try. I found myself swept along, propelled by her zeal, stepping out from the shadows into the bright spectacle of the world, matching our pace to that of the nearing billionaire. Mr. Kingsley. She called, her voice quivering but unwavering. The hustle around us muted, as he paused mid-step, brow furrowing as he turned toward us, a mixture of annoyance and intrigue painted across his angular features. I felt every heartbeat in that suspended moment. The pedestrians around us blurred into mere shadows, the urban tapestry woven into the urgent threads of fate. But then, just as his gaze landed on us, it shifted. Perhaps it was the sight of the girl, her face alight with earnest emotion, or the small teddy bear held against her chest as a shield. But before I could process the moment, an explosion of sound ripped through our bubbly, a sudden crash from the direction of a nearby alley, followed by panicked voices. My heart seized. Someone shouted, and my instincts propelled me forward, protective and desperate to shield the child. Then, with a glimpse of horror, I saw a man tumble into the open, clutching his arm, anger and despair twisting his face. Maxwell's demeanor shifted instantly from curiosity to concern. In that fleeting moment, the image ID held of him began to fray. What if this was the chance the girl sought? But the altercation ended in a flurry of escapes. Cops were arriving, among them civilians trying to intervene, and in all of it, I lost sight of her hand, lost the grip of trust she had offered me. A desperate yelp drew my focus, and I turned just in time to see her slip away from my sight, navigating toward the chaos and getting closer to the billionaire with an intentness I couldn't muster. Wait! I shouted, panic rising as I rushed after her, my heart hammering against my ribcage. Would she risk everything for this chance, and what if danger lurked at her heels? There, amidst the chaos of the world confused by the urgency of human fragility, she had plunged into the unknown, leaving behind the thread of safety we had woven. Would she find answering heartbeats or shatter in the tumult? As I approached the clamor, my lungs burned, and the question hung heavy: had we jumped from destiny merely to fall into peril? As I pushed through the crowd, panic surged through me like wildfire. The shouts of onlookers echoed in my ears, a cacophony that pulled me in every direction. Where was she? My heart raced as I scanned the mass of bodies, each one a potential barrier between me and her fragile determination. "Let me through!" I shouted, my voice strained as I fought against the tide. I couldn't allow her to sink deeper into the chaos. Only a moment before, she had been a beacon of hope, and now, with her slipping away, the darkness of despair clawed at the edges of my thoughts. What if I didn't reach her in time? The alley loomed ahead, chaotic with cops and chaotic voices. I caught sight of her blonde curls bobbing closer to the melee, her tiny frame so inconsequential against the sternness of grown-up fears. She was tapping at a heavy ankle in scruffy shoes as if she thought that stillness could shield her from the incoming storm. "Stop!" I cried out, my voice trembling now, fear igniting a frenzy of desperation. "Please!" I lunged towards her, pushing through the last barrier of bodies, heart pounding like a war drum. But as I finally reached her, just inches away, the sound of a woman screaming for help sliced through the air. In that visceral moment, I froze, my attention divided. Was I supposed to protect her or dive headfirst into the chaos unspooling before us? "Mr. Kingsley!" She called again, her small voice unwavering amidst the turmoil. The sheer force of her determination sent shivers down my spine. And then, in that heartbeat of hesitation, I saw Hema figure towering just beyond the scuffle. Maxwell had rejoined his entourage, but something flickered in his gaze. For a heart-stopping moment, it was as if he looked right through me, through the chaos, to see the little girl chasing after him, but then, his expression hardened. The confusion was replaced with icy detachment. He turned his back on the scene, a fortress built of privilege and boundary, perhaps too used to obfuscating the world around him. I felt my insides twist. How could he? Here was a child with hope threaded through her fingers, reaching for him. "Come on," I said urgently, grasping the girl's trembling hand. "We need to go." There was a heaviness in my voice that she must have sensed, because she finally turned away from the chaos, confusion clouding her eyes. "But we have to tell him," she protested, the edge of despair creeping into her tone. "That he won't listen right now." I insisted, pulling her away, heart racing as she struggled against my grip, wanting to run back. "He might come around another time." But deep down, I wasn't sure of that truth. This was as much my fight as it was hers, and yet I felt like I had robbed her of a chance. As we broke free from the crowd, I noticed a flicker of recognition in her gaze, sadness mingling with something like acceptance that twisted my heart. The world around us buzzed with unrest, the sirens screamed their metallic cries, a siren song of despair and urgency that called me back to reality. "Why won't he just listen?" she whispered, her words cracking the fragile barrier I had tried to construct against the pain. I knelt down to her level, forcing myself to meet her gaze, to show her the resolve that I desperately wished I could summon. "Not every person is ready to change," I said softly, my throat thick with unspoken fears. "Sometimes it takes time, even when a child's heart beats pure." She nodded solemnly, looking up at me, and in her eyes, I glimpsed a reflection of my own uncertainties. The realization that we might fail struck like cold steel, a reminder of how hope could be both a blessing and a curse. Just then, we heard a commotion behind us. A woman burst out from the throng, her breaths ragged, and she stumbled into our path. "Hesha's still in there," she gasped between choked sobs, a hand clutching her chest as if her heart could leap free from her body. "He won't listen." I tried. "He won't listen." The gravity of her panic hit us both hard, the sharpness of reality slicing through our earlier enthusiasm. This wasn't just a fight for a billionaire's attention, lives were at stake. I pressed my lips together, the weight of her words igniting a storm of anxiety within me. "What do we do?" the girl asked, her small voice trembling as she clutched her teddy bear. "Can we help her?" Before I could respond, the distant sound of sirens grew louder, signaling that law enforcement was on their way, but in that moment, I realized something integral. In her heart, the little girl saw a chance for change, for action. She was not merely an observer, she was a vessel of possibility, and I had a choice to make. That we can't just leave her, I said, suddenly resolute. If she needs help, we find a way to get him to listen. With renewed determination, I turned to the little girl, squeezed her hand, and together we stepped toward the uncertainty that lay ahead. Let's go, I said, feeling a surge of courage. I would not let her dreams falter in the shadows. I would not let a single moment of hope slip away. That we pushed back into the chaotic scene, eyes scanning for a way to change the course of this evening. I knew the fight was just beginning, and the stakes were now higher than they had ever been. As we maneuvered through the growing crowd, I felt the crackle of energy swirling around us, a whirlwind of hope, pain, and determination. I glanced at the girl as her eyes flickered with wild ambition and courage, a strength burgeoning with each step we took. In that moment, something profound intertwined within me, a realization that perhaps I was no longer just following her lead, but stepping into a battle of my own. But as we reached the outskirts of the cheering crowd, an unexpected figure materialized from the chaos, a presence that sent ice coursing through my veins. A man cloaked in shadow, standing at the edge of the alleyway, observing. And just as quickly as he appeared, our eyes met, and with a chilling certainty, I knew he was tied to the strings of this unraveling night in a way I couldn't imagine. "Who are you?" I murmured, uncertainty and dread flooding my senses as time stilled around us. "Just a friend," he said, the corner of his lips curving into an unsettling smile as he took a step closer. "But you're in over your head, aren't you?" At that moment, I knew we had stumbled into something far more tangled and urgent than we had anticipated. And as the air grew thick with unanswered questions, I realized we had landed on the precipice of a revelation that could change everything. The crowd seemed to pulse with life, a living beast fueled by our collective fears and hopes. But in that moment, with the stranger's intense gaze fixed on me, the chaos faded into a distant hum. He advanced a step, and I clenched the girl's hand tighter, feeling her squeeze back, her innocent strength grounding me, a fragile lifeline in turbulent waters. "Who are you really?" I demanded, my voice sharp yet laced with uncertainty. In this moment, my earlier promise to protect her resounded in the back of my mind. It was more than just a fearful thought, it was a vow that bound me. The man chuckled softly, an unsettling sound that slid through the air like ice. "I'm just someone who knows the stakes." He gestured towards the melee behind him, where the sirens grew louder, competing with the cacophony of emotions that roiled in the alley. "You're trying to save a man who doesn't want saving. And that child, she doesn't know how much she could lose by standing here with you." I glanced at the girl, whose wide eyes flickered between curiosity and fear. "What are you talking about?" I shot back, the need for clarity igniting a fire in my chest. "She deserves to have a chance, regardless of what he thinks." "Ah, idealism," he said, his lips curled in a smirk that could cut glass. "Charming, but misguided. Your fight against indifference is noble, but can you truly bear the consequences of those who remain blind in their privilege?" The weight of his deliberation was heavy in the air, thick with unspoken implications. My heart sank. What were the consequences waiting for us if we pushed deeper? The little girl, oblivious to the somber gravity swirling between us, tugged on my sleeve, her tiny frame trembling slightly. "Mr. Kingsley, what's going on?" she asked, looking up at me with a mix of innocence and confusion, a fragile hope reflected in her eyes. My resolve ignited. She needed reassurance, and with it, my courage would confront whatever this man represented. "Nothing yet, just a momentary setback," I replied as gently as I could, desperate to shield her from the specter of doubt that was closing in around us. I looked back at the man, every fiber within me bracing for the confrontation I could feel tumbling towards us. "What do you know about him?" I demanded again, forcing my voice to remain steady, even as my heart thundered with trepidation. The man took another step toward me, and the air thickened with an unshakable tension. "The question is not what I know. It's what you're willing to learn. Maxwell is encased in a fortress so high that even the strongest ladder won't reach its glinting summit." He leaned closer, and despite myself, I couldn't help but swallow hard. And you both, out here in the storm, like ships ready to sink. No, I asserted, quick anger fueling my words. We won't sink. We will reach him. She will reach him. I gestured to the little girl, who had now become a beacon of light amidst the season's shadows. But deep inside, a flicker of uncertainty whispered a mere wound questioning my enoughness to protect her, to make change happen. The stranger raised an eyebrow, the grin not faltering. Bold words. But there's more than you realize at play here. This isn't merely a pursuit of a single man. It's a reckoning, a battle against the very fabric of despair knitted through the society you traverse. His voice dropped to a haunting murmur. You and the child could become collateral damage. Before I could retort, the girl's teddy bear slipped from her grasp, landing softly on the cold ground. She gasped, her eyes wide with worry. My bear, she exclaimed, releasing my hand and stepping towards it. For a brief moment, I was rooted to the spot, desperation berating my instincts. Stay here. I shouted, panic rising, but the girl was already bending down. As she scooped up the bear, her expression lit up with innocent happiness that contrasted the eerie atmosphere crafted by the stranger and his ominous words. In that blissful moment, I understood what I was really fighting for. With fragile resolve, I bent down next to her, but as I looked up again, the man was gone, blending back into the throng of chaotic fervor. The air felt charged with a new tension, and I sensed that his presence had left a lingering shadow. Mr. Kingsley, the girl said, and I turned to her. What does he mean by collateral damage? The innocence in her voice struck deep, a painful reminder of the stakes weighing on the precipice of our fight. Before I could formulate an answer, a powerful voice rose from the advancing crowd. This ends now. Someone shouted, and I instantly recognized the authoritative Tonia police sergeant directing her officers to form closer ranks, their purpose clear and resolute. A primal sense of panic coursed through me. In that moment, with the fabric of hope and fear intertwined, I realized, we were caught not just in a fight against indifference but also in a war of silence, where the echoes of one voice were drowned out by the dissonance of hostility. That we must move, I whispered urgently to the girl, taking her small hand in mine again. Things are about to get harder before they get better. We can't stop now. As we began pressing forward, I felt the weight of our quest mount. We needed to find Maxwell, to shout for change in a world that sought to silence those who dared to dream. But as we turned the corner, I was greeted by an anguished cry. The very woman from before, her face streaked with desperation, and in her arms lay a broken boy, barely young enough to understand the chaos that surrounded us. Help! Someone, please! She shrieked, and her voice pierced through the jangle of uncertainty, igniting a firestorm inside me. In that moment of rising dread, reality collided with revelation. The stakes were not just numerable souls seeking salvation from a cold construct but the innocent lives intertwined with this urgent reckoning. As we closed the distance, a question brewed at the forefront of my mind. Was I truly prepared for the lengths I would have to reach, the risks I would have to take, to ignite a flame of hope deep enough to warm the heart of a lost billionaire? But before I could answer that, a familiar form stepped out from the shadows. Maxwell himself, glaring as if he had embraced a storm of his own. Why are you here? He demanded, his voice laced with an authority interwoven with a twinge of confusion that struck me unexpectedly. As I stared into his darkened eyes, a sudden realization washed over me. What if he held the key not only to his own salvation but to a change that echoed far beyond the wealth he imprisoned? Could he hear her? I didn't know the answer, but one thing was clear: no matter how heavy the fog felt, this was our moment to breach the silence, a heartbeat of urgency that could unlock a future shimmering with the light of possibility. And as I prepared to speak, a tiny voice managed to emerge, laced with hope and trembling might, one we could not afford to ignore. As the weight of the moment hung in the air, I found my voice, steeling myself against the tide of uncertainty. The girl beside me, unwavering and innocent, squeezed my hand tighter, emboldening me further. Maxwell, I began, my voice steadier than I felt, we're not here to invade your life. We just want to reach out to help. His brow furrowed deeper, a flash of something almost vulnerable darting across his face. In that moment, I could see that, beneath the hardened exterior, there lingered a spark of something fear, regret, perhaps a flicker of hope he had long since extinguished. But before he could respond, the cries of the boy cradled in his mother's arms cut through the air like a knife. The innocence of that child's fragility unleashed an instinctual reaction within me. Every instinct I had screamed for action, for urgency, yet the danger of my next words loomed heavily over the scene. The woman's hands shook as she held her son, tears cascading down her cheeks. "Please," she implored. "He's not breathing. Help him. I don't know what to do." Maxwell, momentarily paralyzed by the sight, swallowed hard, his resolve faltering. "Why should I?" he shot back, the harshness of his words slicing through the air. The anger in his tone was a stark reminder of the barriers I needed to break down, yet beneath it lay something softer, deeper of fear, perhaps of confronting his own demons. "Because he's just a child," I pleaded, stepping closer, letting the desperation edge my voice. "Because if you can't find it in yourself to save him, how can we expect to save anyone? You wanted to be a savior once. Don't let that die with your dreams." That I looked to the girl beside me, her wide eyes reflecting the purity of hope, the kind that could ignite a passion even in the coldest hearts. She took a step forward, her tiny voice quivering yet steady. "Please, Mr. Maxwell. You can do it. You can help him be okay. You just have to try." It was as if the air shifted, a collective inhale, a heartbeat suspended in time as all attention fell to Maxwell. I saw it then, the battle between the man he had become and the flicker of compassion struggling to ignite within him. But just as it seemed hope might break through, the thunder of the police sirens reverberated through the alley, drawing closer still. Their unyielding presence promised an end to our fragile moment, an impending judgment day that echoed far beyond our immediate despair. "Every second counts," I urged, desperation threading through my tone. "Maxwell, you have the power to change everything. You have to believe you can." He looked from the boy to the woman, then back to the girl. It was a haunting choice, the weight of it almost unbearable to witness. And yet, just when I thought we had reached the precipice, an unexpected gesture occurred. The woman stepped back, perhaps feeling the scrutiny mounting. With shaking hands, she squeezed her son's shoulder, whispering encouragement in a futile attempt to urge him back to them. In that moment of chaos, a rush of emotions flowed amongst us, and I forced myself to keep looking at Maxwell, trying to lock him within this urgency, to help him recognize the humanity standing before him. But then, something shifted. That initial flicker of vulnerability ignited into a roaring tempest of anger. "You think I can just step back into the light? You don't know what I've lost. What I've become." His words exploded, raw and jagged, echoing through the alley as if each syllable were a battle cry. Within his turmoil, though, I caught a flicker of recognition, the awakening of a man wrestling with his past. And then, something remarkable happened. The girl stepped forward again, defiant amidst the turmoil, placing her teddy bear at his feet. "This bear was my best friend when I was scared. Now it is yours," she declared simply. "You can be brave, too." Maxwell's expression contorted, caught in the onslaught of emotions flaring within him. He looked down at the bear, then back up at her, and for a brief moment, an emotion that resembled hope unfurled in his gaze. But time was not on our side. The police were almost upon us. A rush of voices began to envelop the area. "Maxwell, please," I urged again, stepping closer, compelled to reach out to him, to break through the barriers surrounding his heart. "This is your moment. Don't let it slip away. Don't let the darkness win." And just as it felt like our words had struck something deep within him, my heart sank at the sound of a commanding voice cutting through the din. "Step aside now. We need everyone to clear the area." A uniformed officer took charge, her expression serious, every ounce of authority driving at the urgency that now filled the air. The face of conflict churned on Maxwell's features, a tempest brewing as chaos swirled around us. And then an unimaginable twist. Just as it seemed he might relent, just when I thought he would reach out and take hold of his own future, a hand shot forward from the crowd, grabbing the little girl by the arm. Stunned, my heart raced as I turned my gaze to see a pair of dark sunglasses confronting a different figure from the shadows, moving swiftly, the intent in their eyes unmistakable as they pulled her away. No. I shouted, lunging forward instinctively, my heart pounding like a war drum, but I was too late. Panic flipped through me, the chilling realization washing over my skin, that everything we fought for might slip away in an instant. As she vanished into the crowd's chaos, Maxwell's expression of turmoil mirrored my own horror. The sirens blared louder, drowning out reason, drowning out hope, and I could feel the walls of my resolve beginning to tremble. I had one choice left: to push for the truth, to fight for her, and in that moment, to confront the chilling fact that salvation itself now danced at the very edge of our grasp. Would he see it in time? And without the girl at my side, would any of it even matter anymore? My heart raced against the weight of seconds ticking, the walls closing in as voices drowned out our desperation. One truth emerged clearer than before: the battle for redemption had grown infinitely darker, and the stakes had never been higher. The crowd surged like a storm, the cacophony of voices blending into a single, overwhelming roar. People were pushed back by the uniforms of authority, some shouting for order, others retreating into their own fear. I felt the adrenaline surge within me as I glanced back at Maxwell. His face had morphed into a mask of anguish and determination, each second stretching longer than a lifetime. Maxwell. I shouted above the din, desperation clawing at my throat. We need to find her. She can't disappear. Not now. He stood rooted for a fleeting moment, as if time had condensed all the hurt and confusion into this singular instant. I could see his inner struggle laid bare before me, the anguish of a man so fraught with regret that hope seemed both a distant memory and an unbearable burden. And then, just as I feared he might slip away into despair, he shook his head violently, the anger simmering just beneath the surface. I can't go back. His voice shattered through the crowd, raw and quivering, a guttural cry that echoed my own emotions. I can't be what everyone wants me to be. Not now. The words hung heavy in the air, a moment of clarity amidst the chaos, and I could only watch as he fought against the ghosts of his past. The flicker of potential I had seen before now flickered with uncertainty. There was a deep-seated fear that haunted him, a ghost of who he could have become, taunting him relentlessly, but I wasn't ready to give up on him, not when he was so close. I stepped forward, trying to pierce through the tumult that surrounded us. You can't hide from this, from the chance to save her, I pleaded. You're the only one who can reach her. You have the power within you to break through the darkness that binds you. There was a beat of silence, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes, a tether to something more profound than pain, perhaps the memory of joy, the instinctive desire to protect. But just as quickly, the storm returned, and he turned away, taking a step back as if the idea of redemption was physically painful to him. And then, a small beacon of light emerged from the shadows. A hand reached out from the crowd, an older woman, a stranger with wild curls and a comforting smile. Come with me, she urged, somehow cutting through the turmoil. We need to stay together. You'll find her. The tenderness in her voice seemed almost misplaced in the chaos, yet it ignited a spark of clarity within me. Do you see that? I pointed towards her, urging Maxwell's gaze to follow. We are all connected. All of us here, together. She believes. We believe. You have to find that spark within you, or this little girl shall be lost forever. The woman's words seemed to breathe life into a smoldering ember within him. Maxwell's shoulders squared, the wavering within him manifesting into something stronger. I could see a shift in his expression, a reawakening of something that pulsed just beneath the surface, but before we could take a step toward this collective hope, something pulled at my heart, a chill in the air that screamed of dread. My phone buzzed violently in my pocket, shaking me from my moment of focus. I fished it out, eyes scanning the message that flared to life, a single, haunting text from an unknown number: they have the girl. If you want her back, come alone. Panic surged through my veins. It was a choice I didn't want to reconcile: go alone and risk everything, or rally for help and possibly fail to reach her in time. I turned back to Maxwell and the kind stranger, my voice trembling as the weight of the ultimatum crushed down on me. They have her. I have to find her, but I need you, Maxwell. I need your courage. Please, help me save her. His eyes darkened, confrontation bubbling just beneath the surface. You cannot be serious. You're going to walk into a trap without help. But even as he grasped for reasons to turn away, the flicker of the little girl's bravery ignited something primal within Hyman's inner courage that had lain dormant for far too long. Suddenly, the sirens escalated, drawing closer. As if time were mocking my desperation, I could feel the moment slip through my fingers, 1,000 emotions battling for dominion over my heart. The older woman grasped Maxwell's arm, the intensity within her voice unwavering. You both possess the strength to stand against this, together. Don't chase shadows, be the light, and it was in that moment, as the crowds began to disperse, a path clearing before us, that hope and despair collided violently within me. Maxwell's eyes met mine, wrestling with a decision that could change everything. Then, almost subconsciously, he reached out, extending a trembling hand toward me, a fragile yet courageous gesture that spoke volumes and resonated deep within my soul. Then let's not waste another second. Show me how to fight. But just before I could grasp his hand, a loud crash erupted in the distance, chaos descending as shouting voices demanded control over a pack of citizens. My heart raced as the reality of our choices and consequences raced to the forefront, that if I ran towards the light, I could save the girl. But each step forward meant stepping deeper into a trap that threatened not just my life but also everything I had hoped could spark change within Maxwell. As the air thickened with tension, creating a poignant weight against the backdrop of sirens and cries, I realized whatever path I chose could lead to a heartbreaking revelation. The road to redemption stretched out before us, yet not one of us might emerge unscathed. Time was slipping, the stakes hurling us towards an uncertain fate, and I was left standing there, torn between hope and despair, knowing only that the choices we made next would echo long after the sirens faded into silence. The crowd thinned, each face a blur in the melee, but my own surged with undeniable urgency. The crumbling world around us felt as if it rested on my shoulders, a weight that crushed my resolve even as it propelled me forward. I didn't want to turn away, to let go of the fragile thread that connected me to Maxwell's ferocious spirit. He had ignited something inside of me, and the thought of losing that spark was unbearable. Maxwell, I urged again, desperation mingled with newfound determination. You're more than what they see. Let's find her. Together, his fingers twitched, indecision lacing his gaze like a fraying rope. I could see the struggle behind his eyes, the want to break free from the shackles of expectation, the fear of unleashing the darkness that shadowed him. I didn't know what demons haunted him, but for that little girl, I wanted him to unleash his fury against the world that had stripped innocence away from so many. Before he could respond, a whispered confession slipped from my lips. I know what it is to feel lost, to feel like you're drowning. Just a few days ago, I felt like there was no way out. But I can't let that define me. We have to fight, for her, and it was there, in the midst of chaos and confusion, that his walls began to quiver. The fleeting ember of courage flared, brightening the dark shadows woven through his heart. "You want to fight," he finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper, breaking upon words that had danced within him for too long. "But what if I fail? What if I can't save her?" The question hung in the air, laced with an echo of my own fears. What if we didn't succeed? What if we stepped boldly into a darkness that consumed us all? But as I looked into his eyes, searching desperately for any sign of light among the anguish, I felt the quiet glow of a promise forming. "We want," I assured, my hand finally enveloping his, intertwining our fates with a single, unyielding gesture. "We can't let fear overpower us. Hope is stronger. And if we stumble, we will rise again, together." In that moment, the chaotic noise of sirens and shouts faded, leaving a stillness that echoed the heartbeat of our journey. Maxwell squeezed my hand, and something shifted, a silent agreement infused with resolve and courage. Together, we would step into the unknown. Just as we turned to navigate through the remnants of panicked bodies, a sudden commotion erupted nearby, drawing our attention away from the path before us. A man, wild-eyed and trembling, stumbled into our view, frantic as he darted between people. He clutched a crumpled paper, his face marked by desperation that rippled through the air. "Help!" he screamed, reaching out to the crowd, his voice cracking. "I'm looking for my daughter. She's lost." Please, help me find her." For a moment, it was as if the world paused. Maxwell's grip tightened on my hand, and I could feel his heartbeat thrumming in sync with the cries of the distraught father. The sight of another desperate plea served as a striking reminder of our own mission, amplifying the urgency of our quest. But even amidst our collective need, there was an unshakable sense of dread settling into the pit of my stomach. How many of us have already lost our way? I whispered beneath the cacophony, heart aching for the man who resembled what I feared could be our outcome if we failed. Maxwell nodded solemnly, determination etched on his brow. "We can't let her or anyone else get swallowed by darkness." With that renewed sense of purpose, we moved through the crowd, finally carving a path toward the man and his anguish. But as we approached, our hearts collided with an unexpected revelation. Just beyond the throng of chaos, 2 uniformed officers had cornered the man, their expressions steely and unyielding. Their words sliced through the air, a command only meant to suppress and not to protect. "Step back, sir. Save your breath for inside. There's nothing you can do." They barked, the tension escalated, hope waning as the man's desperation turned to defiance. "You don't understand. She's out there. I have to find her." My heart twisted at the sight. Another father, another victim of circumstance. I glanced at Maxwell, the weight of shared burdens wrapped around us. "It's only getting worse. We can't be the next ones to fail." I turned to the frantic father. "Well, help you," I shouted. "Where was she last seen? We can search. Please." And then, as if destiny had taken a twisted turn, a shimmering realization hit me like a jolt of electricity. The uproar from a distance contained an answer commotion that could lead us closer to the lost girl we sought. But just as the possibility of light began to flicker, the officers turned their gazes toward us, suspicion igniting in their eyes. "What do you think you're doing, interfering?" one barked, marching toward us with hands poised at their holsters, ready to quell any uprising. In that moment, the unthinkable happened. In the midst of countless voices crying out for justice, clarity, and truth, chaos erupted anew between officers and the crowd. Maxwell's grip on my hand tightened, his eyes reflecting a storm of calculated fear. Then, as the crowd surged and the officers shouted for control, something shattered within me, a hidden resolve, coursing through every synapse, urging me to take a stand. I had to move forward for the girl who was waiting in the shadows of uncertainty. "Stay close," I whispered to Maxwell. "We can't let fear silence us." With the clamor mounting, there was no time for fear. My heart raced as we weaved through the throng, drawn toward what we hoped was a path toward hope. Each decision edged closer to the precipice of an unraveling reality, knowing that though we began as 2 striving to save one, we may soon find ourselves thrust into the turmoil of many, battling for our own spirit amidst the chaos. With an uncertain future resting on the precipice of an unfathomable night, we pressed one, entangled in both despair and hope, our hearts restless as we crossed toward the unknown, unaware of how deeply intertwined our paths would soon become. And as we turned a corner, I readied myself for whatever secret lay ahead, just as another message dinged in my pocket. This time, it read, "You shouldn't have come here. There's only one way this ends." Maxwell and I stumbled forward, the world around us shifting as fear tangled with hope in a dizzying dance. The message in my pocket burned against my skin, a weight heavier than any dread that lurked within the shadows of our quest. The scrawled words played in my mind, chilling me to the bone. "You shouldn't have come here. There's only one way this ends." What was that? Maxwell's voice broke the spell of silence surrounding us, concern etched across his features. I felt the surge of panic bubble up. Was it a warning? An omen laced with underlying malice? "Nothing," I murmured, shoving the phone deep into my pocket, where it wouldn't taunt me any longer. "Just let's focus on finding her." The way his brow furrowed told me he was unconvinced, but there was no time to unravel the thread of anxiety that we pressed on, cutting through the chaos where desperation and determination collided like flint against steel. People rushed around us, their faces masks of fear or aggression. The desperate father continued to shout, his voice rising above the din with a mixture of heartbreak and defiance, fueling fire within my own chest. In front of us, the officers grew more aggressive, attempting to contain the situation not with guidance, but with brute force. A deep voice boomed out, order failing as the body of the crowd swarmed with its raw energy, rushing against the heavy tide of authority. Please. The man's voice cracked. We're losing time. There was an urgency in his plea that reverberated within my heart, igniting the fear that had long since settled there. Maxwell, I glanced sideways, my resolve hardening. We can't let them silence him. As if reading my thoughts, he nodded sharply, determination igniting within the storm that brewed in his eyes. Together, he said, with a fierceness that mirrored my own, with a deep breath that mingled angst and resolve, I stepped forward fighting against the tide of uncertainty that cascaded through the crowd and called out to the father, "Well, help you." Where was she last seen? The father's eyes locked with mine, desperation shining through the fog of despair. She was playing near the park right over there. He pointed, his voice wavering but firm. The park was a few blocks down, surrounded by crumbling buildings that bore witness to the chaos unraveling around us. With every ounce of courage, I turned to Maxwell, determination running through my veins. Let's go. We can't waste any more time. As we navigated through the throngs of people, I felt Maxwell beside me, an anchor in a maelstrom of bitter emotion. Yet, woven into our determination was an underlying thread of terror, reminding me of the message that loomed in my mind. What did it mean? How were we playing into this unseen hand guiding us along a path we didn't fully understand? Upon reaching an alley that cut through to the park, the noise of the crowd faded slightly, the distant cries of the man echoing, pushing us onward. I shared a glance with Maxwell, his breath was heavy, eyes scanning for the movement of a small figure among the growing shadows. Just as I was beginning to wonder if our efforts were in vain, a flicker of movement caught my eye. There. I pointed toward a small cluster of figures, just beyond a heaping mound of debris. The park's boundaries still marked by remnants of the life that once thrived there, but closer inspection revealed a twisted scenario. A young girl, no older than 5, sat atop an overturned swing. She was gripped in fear, eyes wide as she watched the chaos unfold around her, her surroundings an echo of broken innocence. In that instant, it struck me how fragile this moment was. The choice we made could either lift her spirit or fray it further. We have to get to her, I urged, breaking away from Maxwell's side. Fear clawed at my heart as I rushed forward, desperate to reach her before the shadows of despair consumed everything we fought to save. Wait. I heard Maxwell call behind me, but I couldn't stop. The little girl was everything. I felt the fires of hope igniting not just for her, but for all the innocent spirits who had suffered under the tyranny of circumstance. As I reached her, I knelt in the dust, my tone soft but urgent. Hey, sweet girl, it's okay. You're safe now. We're here to help you. She blinked, seemingly unsure if she could trust me. Her tiny hands curled into fists, trembling in the air as her innocent world collapsed around her. But just as my heart ached to comfort her more, a figure materialized behind me, one of the officers who had been stalking the area, lips thin with disdain and authority. What are you doing? He snapped, shoving through the people surrounding the park, brows drawn low. He didn't wait for my response, his presence toxic as he approached the child. You shouldn't be here, get back now. My breath caught in my throat as I stepped protectively in front of the girl, who whimpered at the sight of the approaching officer. No. We can help her. His eyes narrowed, mouth twisted into a sneer of indifference. Get out of the way, lady. This doesn't concern you. That heavy sense of foreboding swept over me. The eyes of the frightened child stirred something fierce within my soul, igniting a spark of rebellion against not just this officer but the oppressive system that had allowed chaos to reign. I felt Maxwell's presence at my back, a promise of strength as we stood together in defiance. But before I could speak again, a shout erupted from the nearby chaos, breaking like a thunderclap and ripping through our shared resolve. In that explosive moment, a fresh wave of panic roared through the crowd, and I turned to see the father, eyes wild and desperate, reaching for his daughter. No. Stay away from her. He yelled, rushing past the officers, fueled by a primal instinct to protect, and just as the two worlds threatened to collide, a new urgency began to unfurl. What if this chaotic convergence could lead us toward a greater truth? Or would it draw us deeper into a snare where we would find ourselves trapped on a facade built on deception? As I stood at the center of this emerging storm, my heart thundered while possibilities raced beyond Riasone, a whirlwind of connections whispering unsettling truths amidst the cries for help. It became clear, we were on a precipice where standing strong meant risking everything, trespassing down roads neither of us were prepared for entirely. Maxwell gripped my hand tighter, a silent pact amidst rising tides, and then I felt the words slipping forth again, as if summoned by the chaos echoing around us. This isn't just about one girl, I found myself whispering to Maxwell, with fear hanging in the air, mingled with hope. It's bigger. We can change everything, but as the thought crystallized, darkness crept forward like a storm cloud. The world spun, revealing unseen forces, and just as I turned to face palm-held destiny, my phone buzzed violently once more. This time, the message read, "You can't save them all. Just walk away while you still can." And in that very moment, I knew we had awoken something undeniably precarious, a battle of wills that stretched beyond what we could see. The shadows of the park grew heavier as the sirens wailed in the distance, their shrill cries intertwining with the rising tide of chaos that enveloped us. I could feel the weight of the moment crush down, a palpable tension growing thicker with every breath I took. My heart thundered against my ribcage, and I could see Maxwell's face, a mask of determination laced with worry. The father was rushing toward us, his eyes a tempest of fear and love. "No. Stay back," I called, my voice trembling as I instinctively placed myself further between the officer and the small girl, who remained curled into the swing, eyes wide, trembling. The officer sneered, stepping closer, pressing his presence like a relentless storm. "Lady, back off," he growled, his stance shifting to plain menace. My body tensed, every instinct screaming to protect the innocent child trapped in this nightmare. The flicker of her small form, the embodiment of fear, burned in my mind. What would happen if I let him near her? "Please, don't," I found my voice cracking, drowning in desperation as I suddenly felt Maxwell's arm touch my shoulder, a calm, grounding reassurance. "Let's just," Maxwell began softly, but his words lost momentum in the din of the crowd that had turned from worried murmurs to rampant chaos. The father surged forward, his singular focus blinding him to everything else. "Don't you dare touch her," he shouted again, his hands reaching out as he collided with the officers like a battering ram against stone. Before I could react, he was pulled back, grappling against the twisted hands of authority that threatened to extinguish the flickering flame of hope, and then it happened. With a stunning crack of sound, a flash of violence erupted just a short distance away. The bodies of several officers spiraled into chaos as the crowd surged, hungry for disruption and change. Fear rushed between us like wildfire as more than just their authority became palpable in their movements. It now felt like a battle was brewing, so much more than just a desperate father trying to save his daughter. "What are you doing?" I turned my anxiety on the man, who was desperately still trying to push past the officers to reach his girl. Moments collided together in surreal clarity, the cries, the chaos, the unmistakable urgency of lives hanging in the balance. "Stay out of this," one officer barked at him, but something deep within me ignited. "You don't have the right to." "Enough," I shouted, stepping further into the turmoil. "She's just a child. Please, let him through." But as my voice rang out, I felt the tremor of uncertainty pulse through our gathering. Something sinister wormed its way into my heart, the fear that in taking a stand, I was actually guiding us further into danger. Just as the thought resurfaced, the child emitted a soft whimper, eyes wide, as the officer advanced. An innate drive surged through me, stronger than fear, and I was propelled closer to the little girl. "It's okay. We're going to get you out of here, I promise," I said, my breath catching in a torrent of emotion. The world narrowed around us. The cries from the crowd, the shouts of the officers, the chaos all around seemed to blur into a quivering haze. My mind shifted gears. I felt the message in my pocket pulsate. "You can't save them," a taunt, a challenge, or perhaps a warning I needed to heed. Suddenly, Maxwell laid a firm hand on my back, grounding me against the deluge threatening to sweep us under. "We can't let them win. There's got to be a way." His voice was an anchor amidst my growing doubts, fueling a flicker of fierce bravery within me. Yet as the commotion intensified, my heart sank. it hit me, the unseen forces, those words. Whatever lay behind this chaos and whatever game was at play had roots deeper than we realized. I turned back to the girl whose tiny frame seemed so fragile against the storm that encircled us. "You're brave. You're stronger than you know," I whispered, locking eyes with her. For a moment it was as if she saw beyond the fear, beyond the bolts of chaos tearing through her safety. But then a cold hand of realization brushed my spine. Nothing was ever simply what it seemed. In trying to reach out, to extend kindness in a realm devoid of it, I might have invoked forces far darker than I could comprehend. What if trying to save her would only invite greater disaster for us all? As the officer lunged forward, desperation screamed through my veins. I pushed forward, time seemed to slow as I felt the brush of the message lurking. My instinct kicked in, resonating with the need to protect not only this child, but every innocent life tangled in the web of brokenness. In that fleeting second, I uncapped an idea of recklessness and impassioned thought that flashed brightly in my mind. That I caught sight of something ahead, a small break in the throng, a slight clearing leading toward the crumbling stone wall. "This way!" I shouted, rushing back to Maxwell, pulling the little girl gently but firmly toward the potential safety of the shadows, away from the officer's grasp. "Come on," Maxwell urged, his strength a buoy as we forged ahead, weaving through the throng with the little girl nestled securely between us. She turned, her face a mask of confusion and hope, and I desperately sought to reassure her. But as we raced toward the small opening, I felt the world spinning dangerously as if shifting under a tightrope, and I gasped when a deafening crack echoed behind us. Something pivotal had shifted. Looking back, I glimpsed a veil of crisis bloom. Chaos erupted as officers clashed with the anger of the crowd, all consuming, seeking vengeance, pouring out emotion that had where once been latent. The wall behind us began to crumble, and a roar erupted, drowning out every thought of reason as we stumbled once again closer, instinctively pushing onward as the world behind us fractured. And then, just as forward momentum felt certain, whoosh, my phone buzzed violently in my pocket, breaking the tether of the moment. I struggled to rip it from its confines, heart racing, desperate to glimpse the next fluttering message. "You don't know what you're getting into. You have one chance to get out while you still can." The words danced in my mind, burning through the rising adrenaline, a reminder that shadowy forces lingered beyond the veil of our understanding. My breath caught as I grasped the small girl's hand tighter while our paths converged amid the mining echoes of a battle yet unfurling. In this whirlwind of anguish, I made a silent promise to myself to fight, to persist. But as laughter and cries of chaos melded with a deep foreboding, I felt the ground beneath us begin to shift, and I feared the truth. Sometimes, darkness is not external. Sometimes, it seeps in when all you long for is the light. I stood at the edge of the chaos, a whirlwind of noise spiraling around us. The shouting, the cries of desperation, it all blended into a heart-wrenching symphony of pain and urgency that echoed in my core. Clutching the girl's small hand tightly, I felt her trembling, caught between fear and the small flicker of hope I had fought to nurture. The urge to protect her surged like adrenaline, burning fiercely within me. "I couldn't allow anyone else to be lost, just keep holding on," I whispered, glancing down at her wide eyes filled with a mixture of panic and trust. "We're going to get through this together." With every ounce of determination I had, I propelled us forward. The sirens rang louder, encroaching on what felt like the cusp of imminent chaos. And even amid the unraveling of the world before us, a whisper flickered in my mind, a warning, a realization that this fight extended beyond just one lost girl. In all of this, Maxwell remained firmly close at my side, his warmth radiating strength even within the turmoil that threatened to swallow us whole. But just as we neared the fractured wall of chaos, time slowed to an almost freezing point. In that singular moment, a figure emerged from the shadows, a burly officer who had been swept along in the wave of unrest, his steely glare locked onto us. My breath hitched, a rush of dread constricting my chest. "Stop right there," he roared just as we edged toward the alley, and the crowd froze behind us, a collective gasp running through the throng that I felt myself tensing, desire to run crashing against the cold comprehension that this moment was tipping precariously on a knife's edge. Behind me, the father's desperate shouts began to fade as the chaos encapsulated him, and suddenly, it was only the girl, Maxwell, and me, standing defiantly against the officer. "Don't hurt her," I pleaded, stepping forward, shielding the girl with my body. "We're just trying to help," but he stepped closer, inflamed by frustration. I said, "Back away." In that flash of panic, I realized I was out of time. The message in my pocket pulsed more fiercely now, every beat echoing the painful truth: I was caught in a storm not just of my making, but something larger, something waiting in the wings. With no choice left, the act burst forth from deep within, a refuse of caution, a desperation to save the innocent spirit standing next to me, the girl who still had so much fire within her. "Let her go!" I shouted, heart racing, adrenaline pushing me forward until I stepped into the light, feeling the burden of a million souls' hopes and dreams resting on my shoulders. "Or he'll never forgive you." The officer's expression shifted momentarily, confusion wrapping around his anger. For a heartbeat, a glimmer of hesitation flickered within those steely eyes. But all at once, a new surge of noise erupted, shouts crescendoing in a mix of defiance and anger from the crowd, and I realized each voice pushed against us, each heartbeat entangled within the fabric of something larger, a riot of hope, pain, and longing. Then, something shocking ignited within the man's stance. Was it pity or anger? I couldn't tell. All I knew was that the warmth of hope was dwindling, pressing against the wall of fear that might come crashing down at any moment. Just when everything seemed to be collapsing, I felt Maxwell's strength surge next to me. "You're not alone," he promised, his voice steady despite the storm brewing within the crowd. "We can face this together." For a fleeting second, everything paused, the air taut with expectation. It occurred to me then that perhaps this wasn't just a battle against an officer, or the fears of a frightened girl. It was against the insidious shadows that loomed in our own hearts as well. Our fears threatened to drown us for good, to silence the very essence of hope, but it was in that moment of clarity that the most stunning realization washed over me. I understood that true strength was born of vulnerability, and sometimes, we had to let go of the fear of failing if we were ever going to rise. "We are all connected," I continued to challenge, my voice ringing firm now. "Just look at her. She's our chance to become more than what we think we are." The officer faltered, surprise mingling with uncertainty, and for a moment, just a fleeting moment, it felt like the world breathed in. The father's anger cascaded through the ranks as shouts continued to ripple, yet amid them was a melody of hope, rising and breaking forth. Somehow, through all of this turmoil, I knew that unity surged within humanity even in the darkest depths. It whispered that compassion was indeed powerful enough to ignite change. With every second that passed, the officer finally looked beyond the chaos, and I began to see something in his eyes shift. That spark, a thought, a reality that maybe, just maybe, he too had seen too many shadows without recognizing the light could change everything. "Please," I urged, my heart racing. "You don't have to be just another part of the darkness. Help us save her." And for a heartbeat that stretched into eternity, time stopped. The words hung in the air, weaving through the chaos, stirring something possibly dormant within him. He turned, taking in the father still shouting in the backdrop, the little girl gasping at confusion, and Maxwell's steady hand gripping mine. Then, with greater gravity, relationships bound across the abyss of separation began to unfurl. The officer stepped back, catching himself just as voices began to rally around us, creating a chorus of humanity defined by unity and strength, a recognition simmering in the air. "All right," he said at last, his voice dropping in volume as understanding flowed through him. "But you need to leave this area immediately. It's not safe here." The moment encapsulated an astonishing truth: redemption was possible, even amid chaos, and in that breath of understanding, I felt the flicker ignite once again. That we turned, and together, we rushed with renewed purpose, our feet pounding against the cracked pavement as we reached the little girl, drawing her into our embrace, the world collapsing into something beautiful amid the confusion. As we clung to her, the father reached for us, desperation merging with gratitude flowing through the air. But just as I thought we had made it out, I could hear the echo of footsteps, the pulsing sound of forces closing in, and something twisted at the back of my mind. "Wait. You don't need to follow us," I began to say to the officer, who shifted uncomfortably, caught between duty and burgeoning compassion. That it was at that moment I felt the heaviness in my pocket again, another message wrestling for attention, a reminder that darkness still loomed. To ignore it felt dishonest, yet I dared not look. Together, we pressed forward, hearts racing, knowing now that we could lean on one another, that we could be unbreakable even while standing over the precipice of despair, that we pushed toward the light, our silhouettes merging as we fled from chaos. And just beyond the shimmering shadows, hope shimmered in the distance, brightening upon one final pathway: redemption, acceptance, and the understanding that sometimes it is enough to love, to sacrifice, to believe. Yet deep inside me, the harbinger echoed, "You have one chance. Don't let it go." As we emerged from the chaos, I realized the significance of battling darkness transcended our moment alone. It rippled outward, an energy that painted the world we were in with hope, and in that profound moment, as we finally stepped into the light of possibility, a revelation seeping forth, I grasped even deeper the choice that held us united. And I accepted that no matter what happened next, we were all striving, not just to change ourselves but to uplift those around us. Together, we would not only navigate the storm but illuminate a path that made room for love amidst all the noise. We too had become a force of change, woven into the very fabric of humanity, fragile yet fierce, undaunted in our mission to touch lives and embrace the beauty of believing again. And as we stepped forward into the dawn of a new beginning, feeling the warmth of hope wash over us, I knew our journey would forever resonate, beautifully broken yet radiant beyond measure, reminding us that every heartbeat was a testament to not just our survival but our singular, resolute triumph. In that final flickering embrace of trust, the world opened before us, a revelation bestowed upon hearts yearning for tenderness amidst chaos and desire. But above all, there was one undeniable truth that encapsulated everything we had endured: we had learned to forgive the darkness, embrace the light, and stand for each other amid our broken stories. In a world that had loved us and rejected us, we realized the power of choice would forever belong to those who dared to love. And with the dawn rising on the horizon, we emerged into that light, ready to embrace whatever was to come, because sometimes, the heart needs flawed narratives to become whole, the light inheriting all that was once broken, and in the end, we are all worth saving.